And then they need to have sequences that lay out their acts as well. And then one of the things that we added as a result of working with these fellows here is, over on the right, it says which scenes each sequence is, which lines of action each sequence or scenes are a part of. Sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's the other, sometimes it's both. But you can click on one of them, and then you can see all the ones that are for the second line of action. And then you can track it and make sure that that second line of action is strong and works by itself, and then fits together with the other ones. So those are the main kind of differences. Now, Jay did some research with a group out of Minnesota called Group Lens Research.
Movie Lens.
Group Lens?
Isn't it Movie Lens?
Oh, is it Movie Lens? Maybe so. Yeah, I think you're right. I somehow messed that up. Yeah, Movie Lens. And they are a computer science group that is concerned with making recommendations on movies, what movies that you would like. And they have several hundred movies ranked by viewers on numerous attributes. And we found that users universally prefer movies that are strong in plot, character development, and theme. And so we are just adamant that those are the films, those that will reach the wide audience. We don't want just action, we don't want just character development, we don't want just a message, we want it all integrated together. The character development is shown in the action. Again, that's Aristotle. Every action you take is opened up by the character that you have in the possibilities of what you can do. And then the change along the way, the realization, points towards a theme. The theme is not tacked on, it's all integrated. What we're doing is not jazzy, it's standard, but it does it in such a way that it requires writers to do it. Now we are launching a skinned festival in the way that we could provide movies and movies in progress weekly as audience reviews with distributors invited. So we've been talking with Tom about starting online first with small groups willing to accept assignments to do them, and then in live events like a theater, get a good one in Provo, eventually get one in LA and one in New York, and and maybe you give a reduced price for those doing the online audience reviews. We did this last year, 2 months, got 250 films in, found a half dozen that were quality. And we're starting it now, and we're getting about 4 films a day. And the system is set up so that we can handle thousands of films and scripts and pull it all in. And then there's peers that review each the pieces. They have these questions that they have to respond to that are based upon these proven standards that audiences will like. And then staff takes a look at it, and then we get it to audience. We don't go to audience first. We only take stuff to audience we think is pretty good, and then want to make sure that audiences really do like it. So here is our festival page, right here. The name that we call this is Great Cinema Now, which is kind of a continuation of some stuff that we did at BYU. And they submit scripts and films, and we warn them when they submit a film, or when they submit either, they have to provide metadata. If their script comes in, they may not have what the sequences are. They may not have what the log lines are and the subplots are. They got to put that in. And then when the film comes in, we expect them to come in with a script as well.
So there's less to review because they're just putting the structural stuff in the script.
Most of the films, many of the films, will be disqualified by their opening few scenes. And what I've read from people that are reviewing films for Hollywood, they hardly read past the first few pages if it's not there. Because
you can tell.
What?
You can tell. Like,
yeah,
within the pages.
So here's the web page that Nick put together for Great Cinema Now, and it's really quite beautiful. This is a thing that we did with the Orem Library last year, and you can see some of the well, let's see.
They say by page 10, they're not a graph, it's in the circular file.
Yeah,
By
yeah,
page 10.
yeah. These guys are saying, these guys are telling me that it's faster than that.
It is
And I would
faster now.
say, that's why, because in the first few scenes, we need to start the action and see the character. I recently had Jay's son, who's 12. He's bright, he's picky. He came to our the film festival. He described certain films that I had him look at before, and he says, it's just wonky. And one of those, because it was a Utah film, we showed it. And sure enough, that's what some people said. It was, they didn't use the word wonky, but that's what they meant, and they got up and left.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I recently showed him a film that Keith Merrill's group did after they put together their Alliance Studios kind of a thing. And he described the opening in the same way. Partway through, he says, okay, it's beginning to come together now. It was about a half hour in. And that shouldn't have happened. This audience testing is really important. I mean, Pixar does it and takes its films out
It's
to
the equivalent of the 8-second resume rule. Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
Over the years, I've been on juries and a judge on a number of different film festivals. And so, because when you win them, you get invited to do that. So, back when it was tapes and then when it was DVDs and then when downloads, I was just told by the head of the festival almost always, you don't need to spend very much time on these. If you can't see anything by 5 minutes, you don't have to watch the rest. And I remember early on thinking, well, I ought to give them more of a chance than that. I found out they were right.
Yeah, yeah. What we're doing in this thing is they can submit a script, they can submit a film, they've got to provide the script with it. It back propagates the script through the system within these 11 stages. And if they want to revise the script, they can do it and just re-evaluate. If they want to redo some of the film, they can do it. Now, Jay has skinned PLOTSA for Great Cinema Now. And there's the page that goes to the to register, and then here is the page where you saw on the left there are the 11 stages that they've got to go through, and then here's where you choose my script to import it, so that it feels very much supportive of that festival. We could do something like that if LDS, if the festival wanted to do something, and just said, we're going to bust loose, and we want thousands and thousands of films in from all over the world, or if LTUE wanted to do something like that, we could do the same kind of thing. So where we are right now is we've got several little ads in various versions of it along the way, and we are needing to launch an ad campaign with several related ads and outlets to get lots of submitted movies and movies in progress. We just want tons of them, but we're prepared with crowdsourcing and technology to sort through these things and to get back to them and to sort through and find the quality ones and bring them along. And then with the promise that we will get them to distributors. So we've got to find some good ones, do some good work, and convince distributors to want to participate in the ones that come all the way through. That's what we're working on. So anyway, that's my presentation. So I'll open it up for questions and answers.
Maybe you've already gone over this, but how do we log in? How do we access?
Just go to plotsa.com, and you'll need to
Register.
Yeah, you will need to register. So this is how it comes up initially. One of the things that we do to
How come filmmakers are so resistant to start off with action? I mean,
they have been Sid Fields and some other people have sort of convinced them that there's a 3-act structure.
Right.
And the first act is to show the background and finish with starting of the action. And that is a total misunderstanding of of Aristotle. Aristotle said you want your beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is not an act where you diddle around until you start. The beginning is where you start, where you don't need something before it. The ending is not where you finish it and then show how life turned back to normal. Again, that's too slow. And this Jay's 12-year-old, he hits a movie, and if it starts doing that, he says, well, the movie's over. What are we sitting here for? You know, you don't do that. The ending is a point at which you don't need to know what comes after that. And in the middle ones, the middle is what you need to know before what projects out to the other. Aristotle's really clear, but people don't understand. I did a paper and presented in London about Aristotle for scriptwriters that have misunderstood him. But there's been a long tradition of that. But Europeans are coming around. I'm talking about films that play at the Cannes Film Festival, the Dardenne brothers, for example. Some of you may know them. And their films start with the action. They've got it. And I think maybe Robert, I don't know who has gotten to it and taught them right.
Well, it is Robert McKee, because in his book, he says, in Story, he clearly says a European film takes 15 minutes to get to the point. An American film starts with a punch in the face. That's what he says.
Yeah, that's right. And the Europeans are getting it now. And so their films are fast-paced movie. This girl, the boy is on the phone, Dad, where are you? Why can't you've abandoned me. Where are you? Okay. Another one, this woman is, she's lost her job. She got fired because the others had a choice of making more or firing her. She is distraught about that. The whole film is called A Day and a Night, and she is trying to deal with that. It moves fast, and that's what we've got to do.
Okay, I got a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between action and the inciting moment?
The inciting moment is what starts the action. And generally people want to say, show what leads up to the inciting motion, show the inciting thing, and then show them starting into it. Aristotle says, no. Start at a point where you don't need to know what's going on before, and you see them proceed. And so that's the one sentence that we start with for the plot and for all the subplots, and then we split those out into acts, sentences for those, and those out into scenes, and it all, you're evaluated on it along the way. Your feet are sort of held to the fire to make sure that you actually do that.
The turning points serve as an inciting instance.
Well, the turning point, they're starting the action, and then there are turning points at the end of each act that are throwing you and saying, okay, now what is he going to do?
Right.
And it's just that simple. There's a lot of turning points, but there's got to be a big one at the end of each act. And then the ending has got to finish it. And either you end the action, accomplish it, or you give it up. But we've got to have seen the character development by that point.
Does Aristotle still keep within the 3 acts?
Okay. It's interesting working with these fellows here. They were the ones that sort of pushed me to say that those were 3 acts. I had sequences and so on. But really you can see the sequences as acts. Aristotle doesn't talk about that. Okay. He says that you complicate things, you're tying the knot, and then you're untying the knot and you finish it. And in terms of an analysis, you could have 3 acts, 4 acts, 2 acts. You could have a number of them.
He doesn't compartmentalize.
No.
Okay.
No.
What is your take on Frank Daniel's 8 sequence structure?
That Frank Daniel's is very interesting stuff that he did with the sequences and so on, and I think that that's good. It doesn't have to be 8. Aristotle wrote the Poetics around the same time that he did the Rhetoric, which was about how to give talks in courts. Okay, and he actually started a school. He was a philosopher that did some really practical kind of stuff. And he said that he read all of the manuals about how to do this stuff, and he read tons of plays trying to assess what is the core central part of all this stuff. And what he said in some of the ones that told the talks, you don't just start with what the problem is and then show the various solutions of what how they failed, and then what your answer is, which he said is what you should do. You have to do this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and like 12 different steps, and he was making fun of it. And I think there are a lot of script writing books. You can read all these script writing books, but they are not at the core, they are not the heart of it. They are somebody's opinion that we need to have this, and everyone is trying to make some addition to what Aristotle did. I'm not doing that at all. I'm saying, what did you do? The only thing that I'm adding to Aristotle is the subplots. He doesn't mention the subplots. And I think you gotta have those. With Aristotle, you had choruses that could sit back and moan, and sing, and respond to something, and take up time.
They were the music track.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the music track. And we generally don't have that, although Woody Allen did a movie that was like that, and Mighty Aphrodite. But, so we need subplots to enrich kinds of things, but we do it in the same kind of way that Aristotle advised, yes.
So, my problem that I have in layman's terms, I don't know all the technical details,
Yeah.
sequencing, and this and that, and
Yeah.
I just know that I like to start with action. I like to start where people are engaged very quickly. But I have a problem with the balance issue. If I get into action, I don't know these people, I don't care about these people yet. If they're in danger, I don't know who they are. I don't care enough about them. So there has to be enough development so I get to know them. Now all of a sudden I care about them. Then when they're in danger or whatever's going on with the action, the conflict, now all of a sudden I care.
Yeah.
How do you get that balance between developing enough so you care about the characters, but not spending a bunch of time on development? Because I hate that, it's too slow. So, you could do some development during the action, but
I just would say, though, that when we talk about action, we are not talking about bombs exploding or planes crashing or anything like that. We're talking about what the character is trying to do. So the biggest, I believe it was the biggest all-time animation film, Finding Nemo, starts off with him trying to protect his little eggs and stuff, okay? And if he's doing something that is decent, that a good person would do, we start to care about it. We don't know why he is being so protective about that. We don't have to show his life as a fish and all the dangers that he's got. We don't need that. We just need to see what it is that he's doing.
That's how you get to know.
We need,
That's how you get
the
to know.
audience needs to root for that character no
Yes,
matter what it is.
Yes,
In a simple way, and
Yeah.
then you can expand upon it.
yes, and then, yes.
I was just gonna say to add to that, like the action and the character development really should go hand in hand
Yes.
in the beginning of
Yes.
your movie. I think that the Pixar Incredibles is actually an incredible example of that, because you have your classic superhero, you set up and you understand. I actually think stereotypes work really well in the beginning of a movie because there's so much baggage that comes with it, and then when you flip the stereotype, that's when you go deeper. But in The Incredibles, you have Mr. Incredible that's the superhero, and there's the bank robbery, police chase scene, and so he's going in to do that, and then he ends up having to save a cat, like in a tree for an old lady, and you kind of have that build up of that he's trying to get the cat out of the tree, and the police cars are coming, and how does he solve that? He takes it and throws the tree into the thing to stop the cars while flinging the cat to the old lady's arms. And then it keeps building off of that, where all the different heroics he does, he's got something that keeps coming up. He's like, I've still got time, I've still got time. And so you have just all these questions and answers that keep getting asked and getting answered with this great action sequence, which culminates to him getting married to Elastigirl at the end of that opening sequence. And so you can see that you have the action, but then you have this kind of character idea of him trying to do the good thing is always making it hard for him to achieve his goals, and the hard thing to achieve his goals ends up being family life, right? Like his goal is family life, and then you get to see that kind of basis that it establishes in the beginning of the movie then be the thematic element throughout the rest of the film as well, right? And so it's about blending those kind of things.
Yeah, and again, that's Aristotle. He says you include it all. You've got to show, so then the first few scenes, you got to see what is the character up to, what is that character like. We're probably going to see some character deficiencies, but we're going to like him well enough that we will want to stick in there with it. So one of the things that we do when we're getting writers and filmmakers ready to work on this material and to review each other's stuff is we have them submit a film or recommend a film that they really like. So Steve recommended one that I had never seen, that I never thought I would watch, was Mad Max. And the viewer
Original
tag,
one?
the,
No, Fury Road.
The Fury Road.
the viewer tag for it is a former devotee tries to liberate the pampered wives of a slaver warlord. Okay, so the devotee, that is what she's trying to do. And what is she like at the beginning? How does she change at the end? What's the theme? This is not the full version of it, but they have to be able to write that, a log line for your script. So okay, so Jay, you were saying here, if they want to sign up, they go over here and they just put in an email, password.
Well, that's
and
a sign in, just create an account at the bottom.
Oh yeah, create an account here. Then you go in and create an account, your name and email and all that. And then you're in. And then you can put in a script. People maintain the ownership of all that. But then they have to qualify to be able to start reviewing other people's stuff. So that's the crowdsourcing. And the way they qualify this in part is that they have to provide a movie that they like, and then they have to explain what is the action. What is the character starting to do? And what's his initial character like? How does the character change? What theme does that point to? That's the core element of a story. And you've got to get that straight. Yeah.
Okay, so my script, you guys saw a little bit of that one part right there, was written by 3 filmmakers. One was Richard Dutcher, the other was Rocco de Villiers,
Yeah.
and the other was, well, I guess he's more of a Hollywood scriptwriter. And so I remember sitting on the plane when the first draft came out, reading it, getting angrier and angrier as I kept turning the pages, because it was page 20 before any sort of inciting moment action started. And so I'm like, what the heck? And so I had this meeting and I said, we can't have an inciting moment come on page 20. I mean, I would have shut this thing off. You know, imagine ADHD people with a remote. You know, they're going to shut it off, change the channel. I said, I would have changed the channel a long time ago. I would have shut this thing off. I would have walked out of this movie, whatever. They're like, oh, no. This is what you have to do. You have to do this because you have to develop the characters. And this, you know.
Yeah, okay, so let
Setup. It's a setup.
Critics are going to laugh at this film if you start, you know, because they wanted the critics. If you want to impress the critics, this is what you have to do. I'm like, I don't care about the critics. I want to impress the audience.
I want to come back and I want to say, if you're talking about Cannes Film Festival critics, they are moving in the direction, they are strongly in the direction that we're talking about. Start that action.
I got them, the best I got them to do was to go to page 11. They got to page 11 before the inciting moment started any kind of action.
So there are several things you can do about that. One, and not just one thing. Sometimes people will look and say, well, you know, do some flashbacks. Start with the action, and then do flashbacks for all the
backstory.
Yes.
But that's a device that's okay, and I've done that before. And that, in fact, I did it on one film, not because the script called for it, but because in editing, it's like, wow, we got to do it this way, and this is way bad, so I'm going to now create flashbacks that I never shot for, but it ended up working well. But there are other things you can do. Some of the subplots become exposition, which is great. Yeah. And by subplots, meaning you start with the action, and then you work on some subplots, which now give you some of that exposition. Another one, one that Robert McKee said, is that you use exposition as a weapon. You use it as a weapon. And so it's not just expositional explanation stuff, it is made into something that has...
So when you're in a big argument, do you remember when I told you this before?
Yeah.
You did that.
Yeah.
And then it brings it up.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second here?
What?
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Yes, yeah.
Is the issue that the inciting incident started at 20 pages, or was the problem that the first 20 pages were boring?
Yeah, there you go.
Because, when it comes to structure and everything, whether the inciting incident's at page 20, page 11, or page 1, I think the big thing is you have to grab the audience's attention and you have
Yes.
to earn it.
But again, Aristotle would
Yeah.
say, you grab their attention not by showing them something splashy or telling them about a joke at the beginning of something or other. You show them the problem that somebody is trying to solve.
Mhm.
And then you see all the problems with it, and you gotta get into that.
But I mean,
Right.
case in point, one of my favorite films of all times is My Neighbor Totoro by Hayao Miyazaki. Like, that doesn't really start with a problem. It doesn't necessarily have, you could say the inciting incident is them moving into the new house, which is the opening scene. But they move into the house, they have fun cleaning the floors, finding dust sprites in the attic, discovering the bathroom.
I would say sort of if you show them something exotic or different or something, it can hold their attention for a while. But I think that if we're going for the wide audience, we should focus, again, as Aristotle would say, is get it all in there. Don't, let's focus on the films, making the films, and finding the films, and showing audiences the films that get into it quickly. And, they can watch these other ones and make these other ones, as well. But get into the action quickly, see the character development, and then see the beginning of the theme. So Keith Merrill, he made a film about a girl that was saving dogs from a dog catcher. 12.
The 12 dogs of Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. And it also had some character development in that she would lie. By the end, she stopped lying. The trouble was the character development was not connected to the plot. I don't care about how she gets along with her mother or something. I want to see, unless that's a subplot, I want to see what her character is like in the actions that she's pursuing. So as she's trying to protect it, save these dogs, is she lying? And then when she stops lying, does that help her solve the problem at the end? You don't want to just include it in there. It's got to be integrated. And just as Brandon was saying, you've got to see the character early.
So do we care about the character development, the growing and changing?
Yes.
Of just the main character, or the characters around the main character?
It depends.
Who has to
Yeah,
change?
those are going to be subplots. And there's going to be characters that are going to be changing.
And if you have a static character, you don't have a subplot for them, right?
Right, if you have a static character, you don't have a subplot from it. Now, this is Aristotle. What do you do about a character who is pretty much good all the way through?
Rapunzel entangled
Yeah.
versus Flynn Rider.
Okay, here's Aristotle, an Aristotelian.
Here
Here is an Aristotelian answer. Aristotle says that your potentialities, which is your character, is dependent upon the situation you're in, the opportunities that there are around you. That is what you get to choose out of, okay? And that involves what you bring to it, but also what's around you. Now, if you have a pretty good character, like Gladiator, or like Jesus, what happens is the people around him start improving. And that opens up a space for Jesus to do more. It's the same thing with Joseph Smith. He was so relieved when others saw the angels and so on. He wasn't by himself. So it opens up a space. So there can be character development, and Aristotle calls the one positive character and the other negative character, negative potential versus positive potential. And you're looking for the potentiality of this character, and you want to see it grow, and you want it to point towards some theme that you're bringing out. And that goes then back to Plato, who said you need to have a theme that integrates the whole thing.
Can you have a character who has reverse development? In other words, they start with good intentions and everything goes terribly wrong.
That's Breaking Bad.
Well, I would say, take something like King Lear, which is one of his really, truly great plays, he does not succeed in what it was that he was trying to do. In the end, he has to give it up, which was to be a lazy bum and let his kids run the kingdom, okay?
And that's when you end up with tragedy.
And he
That's a
gives up.
tragedy.
He gives up on his action. But character develops. He learns a ton. You know, it's extremely powerful, you know, when he asks forgiveness of Cordelia in the end.
That's
So
true.
I would say, even if you fail because you botched it so badly, you need to improve in some way, in a way that points towards a theme. If you just have a movie where somebody starts off pretty good and he gets bad and so on, that is not a movie that is going to reach a wide audience.
Okay, Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Uh-huh.
He
Yes.
starts off with good intentions and everything
And
goes
everything
terribly
goes-
wrong. And
But
it culminates
Well-
in his death.
To the very, very
The
end.
problem is the things that go wrong, he starts to create for himself. He makes specific choices that sends him down that
I get really
path.
frustrated with that show because he keeps lying to his wife and he never learns.
Yeah. Yeah,
He started off as a relatively good teacher,
sure.
and he ends up as like this villain kind of character that,
He's the nightmare that knocks on the door at night.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the
So
end.
then
But you
people
see,
buy it?
But you can
There are
see-
I
characters
mean, how
who-
do people buy that?
How do
What's
you-
my name? He even gets the bad guys to kind of show him some,
Yeah.
you know, I think most people hate that ending.
But I mean,
You can have a character who,
But people watch that,
gets,
though.
who sort of falls apart, but in the end, if he begins to recognize that he's falling apart, then he's wrong.
And he does, he self-sacrifices, he knows he's going into that ending and he's gonna be dead. But he's gonna take everybody down with him. So, in the very beginning of that, he starts the story himself. That's where you've got that line between the inciting incident and the norm breaker being the same. You know that if you start your own story, me buying a barn and not being a millionaire to start with, it's either gonna be a tragedy or a satire. Breaking Bad ends as a tragedy, and then Jesse, isn't it Jesse?
Jesse
Is the footprint character that then hopefully, like,
moves on.
Okay, so in a tragedy, we don't like the ending, but we like the show because we liked all the drama.
You know, we like the
You get that.
character.
So,
the
do we
characters
like
are
the
still
film if
engaging.
we like all the drama, even if the ending
So,
is...
Going back to Breaking Bad real quick, the thing about that is that it starts you off by being on board with him. Like, the
Yeah.
thing about the bad choices that he makes is that there's
it's
a
a
level
choice
of...
that we could possibly
Yeah, there's a
make,
level of
thinking
wish
we're good,
fulfillment.
and it shows us how absolutely wrong of a choice that can be. Because it's very enticing. When he starts it out, you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
oh, I can understand that.
Yeah,
And then it just spirals out of control.
It's kinda
which
like-
is like, oh my goodness, I'm going on this journey. I could have fallen for this because maybe I had really great idea, not.
a lot of it comes down to wish fulfillment. If a character, well, let's say, breaks the law, but it's something as simple as there's a whole bunch of cones up on the side of the road and they decide to turn and ram all the cones. Isn't that something all of us have kind of thought about doing? Like, what if I did that, right? So when you see someone do something like that, it's satisfying because you get to see them doing something that you thought about doing yourself. The problem is he's setting all those cones, he's destructive and he's breaking the law and he's causing problems for other people. And so it actually starts by having him do the things that kind of fulfill the wish fulfillment and make you root for him, but then it keeps him spiraling down that path so that he gets to the point where you realize you've been rooting for a villain, right? It's not just Breaking Bad though. Like, I think There Will Be Blood is another fine example of a character who is bad, that does bad things to people. And I believe the last line of the movie is "I am ruined" after he kills somebody. Like,
And that's
It's-
a character development that they realize how wrong they've been.
I don't know if it's him realizing how wrong he's been. I mean, he does that as a way of saying, "Look, I won." Ruining himself was him winning, but it's one of those things that, like,
Yeah.
I think that for characters, it's important to know what is the goal, what is it that they want to do,
Yes.
how do you know that that's their goal, and then what happens if they achieve it, and what happens if they fail. And by asking yourself those questions, you can kind of get a grasp of what kind of story that you're
I would add, and let us know what his character is like as he starts it, and let us know what it's like at the end, and then let us see what that points to. These fellows here have been working on a script on PLOTSA, and I thought maybe you guys would like to share a little bit about what your experience has been in working on it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I decided to just start from scratch. I didn't bring any of my previous ideas. I just wanted to see what the structure of PLOTSA would actually do, to see if it was like an actual tool that anybody could come in and use. Because one of the things that I think is most important about putting together a good story is having a good structure. I'm a McKee devotee, definitely. And so the really interesting thing about the PLOTSA structure is that it's kind of like architecture. If you've ever seen a movie called, it's about Frank Gehry, it's about an architect it's about Frank Gehry, who makes the most mind-blowing movie or buildings you've ever seen. But as you follow him around, you realize that he makes these tiny little models to begin with that are based on these strange little sketches. He goes from sketch to tiny little model to slightly larger model to eventually the blueprints and the entire building. But the entire way, he knows that his building has to stand up, that it has to meet code, that people have to be able to walk around in it, that it has to have a ventilation system, all of these things. He knows that there are a million things that go into making this building actually perform its function as a building. And so PLOTSA, I started to realize as I was working through this, starts you just like an architect. It starts you with that tiny little sketch, which is the original logline that shows you the entire plot arc. And so you, as the author, know where this is going. A lot of people, I used to be one of them, think, oh no, what you do to write is you just write as if you're reading. And that's when you get long, meandering things that don't really have much to them until you go back and you have to tear your hair out as you're trying to put the plot in. And it's especially awful when you put, all the time into editing it so it's word perfect, and then somebody goes and looks at it and says, you have no structure here. So anyway, here you start with the sketch, and you go to the smaller version, and then you go to the larger version, and you eventually get to the entire thing. But the entire way, you know the structure stands up. You say, here are the narrative footings, right here. This is what the character is going to be doing. This is where the character is going to try to go. This is what the character is going to risk. Here's the antagonism that's going to work against them, and here's how it's all going to go. So you set down the footings, and then you start building your narrative. You build the skeleton of the narrative. You never come out of any of those stages with anything that's pretty. You just come out with bones. You put the bones together until you finally have a structure that stands up. And people can come and wiggle it, push on it, do things to it, and it stands up. They're like,
Well, skeletons are kind
yeah.
of, skeletons
What's
are
that?
kind of pretty.
Yeah, skeletons can be pretty, you're right. So anyway, you see that you start from pitch, and then you go all the way to script, and you're just building bones the entire way. But you know that you're building on each of the footings, and then you work with other people who know how this works. So an outside person who doesn't know what's going on can say, yep, this works. And so you put all the work in the beginning. That's what PLOTSA is good at, to me. It's helping you put all the work in at the beginning so that you have a structure. And then you can put any kind of cinematography or costuming or any of that stuff, or music, and it's going to stand up and have your particular flavor. But it's going to have a wide appeal, it's going to have themes, it's going to have the character. And so, yeah, I started from the beginning, and it really worked out well. I don't feel like I should say much more.
Okay, that's
okay, I'm
great.
done.
That's great. So he's done a little series of consultation videos that we've included, sort of to tell people about how they come in, and it's right next to the tutorial kind of thing.
In PLOTSA.
In PLOTSA, yeah.
Is there a fee for PLOTSA?
We started it so that it's just free, and you peer review each other's stuff, and by the time it gets up to staff, you're starting to have to pay. And then, but Steve is going to be staff, and we're going to get people up there as fast as they can to handle staff and stuff.
You earn a rank on PLOTSA, and when you get like up to 10, then we'll consider you as a staff reviewer.
He's a staff reviewer, so we build him up. So here's his little part down here on consultant intros that he does there. Now, and then the thing that I don't know, if we saw the link here, is that by the time you get down to a shooting script and storyboards and so on, the shooting script is based upon the beats that you had before you did the scene. And you're bringing out the main beat changes. And that's what a good director has got to be able to do. It's clear. But, and you know, when you're working with writers, if you worked more like a studio, you would say to them, I want your pitch, your log line. Let me look at it. Bless you, it's good, go on. And that's the way, that's what J.D. Payne was saying, that's the way the studios work. They don't let you do a whole script. Or certainly they'll let you do a whole movie. They do the pieces. So when we worked with Matt Jensen there at Lionsgate, I was working with a novelist, and he was the same way. You know, he just says, oh, and finally the novelist sort of, yeah, we couldn't stand the discipline, and we didn't have PLOTSA yet at that point. But we just needed to know. We need to know a scenario, a summary of all your scenes, and we need to see how they are structured, and it's got to be tight. So, Abe, you're...
Yeah, no, yeah, I got, the difference between Steve and I is I don't have a master's degree in screenwriting, so. But what I enjoyed, I remember buying a library book 17 years ago on how to write a script, how to do script writing, because I was excited about doing that. And when you get that, you just get overwhelmed, and it's kind of, you know, just discouraging, because it seems like it's a lot more to bite off. And those ideas that you have, you can't get to. What I really enjoy is what Steven said. It's just, you know, when I teach my kids how to draw and do art and animation, you do it, it's a principle. It's a principle of life. If you want to make a cake, you have to do it in an order. And to make it right, you can't just take the box and eat it, because it doesn't work that way. And it's like, well, here's the cake. Why doesn't it work, right? You have to go through a process. And it's forcing you to do it the same way you do any professional work. A professional artistic piece, a professional gaming, it comes from a plan, an execution, revisions, and then the final product, and then the icing on the cake. And too often, this is how people draw this way too. They'll get detailed and do all this stuff, and then the picture's not even done. They don't do the thumbnails. And so, what I've really enjoyed is what Stephen said. It's forcing you to go scene by scene, thinking through the ending, coming up with a sketch of making it so that it has the layers, and you know that by the time now you get to the beat scripts and the script writing, that's really just the icing on the cake, you know. And then you can fuss with it at that point, all the little details. But you know that the main point is and if you need to go back and change something, you go back to where it makes sense. You go back to the you know, back to the main scenes, and you're just moving it around so that you say, okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. Or like I have two subplots, you know, two characters are being developed, a man and a woman. And so I know that I need to go back and I need to make sure that there's a good story arc with her character, and that it makes sense how she's developing. And so by keeping it in this simple form, I don't have to rewrite the whole thing. It's just getting it through the process. And so I think doing it this way is actually really enjoyable, because I don't feel like my life is on the line trying to complete it, because I know I can't finish it until I finish the basics. And so I think it's really it's a really good way of doing this. And honestly, I would never do it another way. Now that I know that this is the way to do it, I couldn't see myself just writing a script and just going forward with it. I would have to do it kind of in this method. So
at some point, so his piece is called Frequency, and it's sort of an Adam and Eve story. And it's been fun to talk with Abe about that, because how do you bring in the Adam and Eve story into something that's very contemporary? But it's building very well. But one of the things that we are in process of doing is inviting film directors to shoot scenes out of the story, essentially a we call it
Right,
a
so
scene.
that would have been
Pick a
us saying
scene
it from
and push
the
that
front.
scene, let the writer push that scene through, and then let a director shoot that scene, and then take that package to distributors. We've got a long list of distributors we're going to. And then the director needs to go back and look at the beats that were in that scene and structure it so that it brings all that out. It's all highly connected, integrated. I love Plato's thing about it's got an organic unity. Everything is just tied in together. It's not tacky. And then Aristotle was the one who figured out how to do that in a step-by-step kind of way.
I think everyone wants it, but they don't realize that through structure you create the organic unity.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part. Conception is way more fun than leaving delivery.
So any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
We're right up to the point where we're trying to launch some ads. We're trying to figure out how to do a campaign and how to get our people submitting stuff. We want thousands and thousands of films and scripts submitted, and we will help the people be able to evaluate them. We'll sort through them, and we'll find the gems and help some of them come along. That's what we're prepared to do.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What Doug described with reading up to page 20, all that, is really common. It's not a rare thing. That's the
norm.
Also, yeah, it's the norm.
It's been a norm for a while.
That's why you kind of most likely not good.
Yeah. There are many reasons why, but that's the first big reason why. And so people submit a script to me and say, want you to direct this. And I read it, and that's what I encounter. And yet I also find enormous resistance to fixing it.
Yeah.
You were able to get up to page 11. But this would be a tool to help convince them, I would hope.
Yeah, because I think it's just subjective and there's too many different opinions, but this is more of a.
This makes it almost mathematical. You can say, see where you didn't add these two numbers together correctly.
And you can start off by saying, you can write your notes about scenes and what you think about the story and all of that, but in the end, you've got to compress it down, and I need that log line. And we're not going to go on beyond that, writers. Let's get there. And that's part of the reason, when you do it this way, you can get multiple writers involved, because we're working off the same thing. But you got to have that thing there together first.
So I've heard a lot of technical terminology that might give your site some relevance from screenwriters, but I have no idea what log line is. I mean, there's a ton of terminology that I heard. I have no idea what it's about. What's a log line?
I think
It's what you find in your
It's more marketing.
TV guide about what the
It's usually a poster.
It's an interior. Oh,
Like describes.
it's like your, yeah, it's your kind of like
This movie you're about to watch.
yeah, it's a log line. We also call it a line. It's a line of action. It's another phrase
I
we
would
use.
I would
Line of action.
suggest though that log line, as it is in service of promoting the film on a poster, may not necessarily be the same log line.
Yeah,
That's right.
And yet, an elevator pitch or a log line like this is highly useful for
And that's why we've got two versions. We've got the full one and then the viewer hook, we call it, which is you take the full one and you compress it down and get it. But it's the one sentence statement that catches your whole film. And again, that was Aristotle. You've got to start by conceiving the one thing.
It's the original, we call them taglines.
Yeah.
We don't call them log lines.
Yeah.
Well, another way to look at it.
Tagline, I understand what you're talking about.
Another way to look at it, which has some relevance, you gotta be wise about all these things, because some people don't wanna latch on to one only. But another way to look at it is every film can be characterized by the answers to three questions. The first question is, what two forces are in conflict? Which one wins? There's your whole point.
I would say there's more to that.
Oh, way more, but that's a beginning.
I would say I would say, what is the main, I just was watching, who's the social network, yeah, Sorkin? Yeah, Aaron Sorkin. He says, I'm concerned with intention and opposition. What is the intent of this character? What is the opposition that he faces? I would add, the third thing is, and what's his character like at the beginning and his character like at the end? So that's a character arc, which is going to point towards some kind of a theme, and then you've got all of the elements there together.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Does everybody know the Jesse Smollett story? Because the basis of that is the same as mine. Jesse Smollett, he sets up this, he's an actor, he wants more publicity, he also wants to promote Black Lives Matter, or whatever, he's got an agenda, but he wants to promote himself, so he sets up this mug where he gets mugged by two white guys and then claims, oh, you know, look what happened to me, and, you know, I was profiled, you know, and I was this, and this, and this, and he sets the whole thing up. And America is captivated by that story. They're like, wow, this, you know, what's the opposition to that?
Okay, but I would go back and I would say, okay, so what's his name, Jesse? Jesse Smollett. What's his name? Jesse. Okay, so what is he like at the beginning? Jesse Smollett, who in the beginning is kind of
lower level, mid-level actor.
No, I wanna know what his character. What is he like at the beginning?
And then taking that.
Who is
he's deceitful, he's
okay, is rather deceitful, is trying to promote himself, and in the process risks this. What does he risk?
His career.
His career.
Credibility.
Yeah.
That's what he risks.
And along the way, develops into something more like this, pointing towards a theme of that. That's what I'm looking for.
He's still in the middle of his own moral, because he hasn't heard.
Yeah.
Does he at the end?
Or is the ending's not there yet?
We're talking about real.
Oh, you're talking about a real character.
This is real.
Oh, okay.
This is the story that's happening now.
Yeah, we have to see.
Yeah, people are captivated by that
For
character.
his own life.
Well, you could also focus on why he would do what he does. He obviously thinks he has good intentions towards something that he may be misinformed about. And then it turns into being negative. It turns into him starting to get from his intention is good to be deceiving. And then obviously you gotta figure out in the end where that's gonna go.
Well, so he's turning into a joke, and people don't like him except to make fun of him.
Yeah.
And so ultimately his character arc is that he's
Yeah.
not doing, now if
Be careful what you wish for.
if he decided to be just redemptive and overcoming that and
Yeah.
on top and apologizing, then everybody will love him. And
That's right.
You'd enjoy watching that movie, you know?
So what is it that the American people are grabbing onto? Why are they so captivated? There's probably hundreds of stories that involve
Yeah.
like the truth.
Actually, what it is it's the victim culture. There is something about a person who is a victim that evokes
I would need to do a deeper dive into
sympathy,
all that, but
empathy
like,
in people.
those are
And
the
some
things that
people
he's.
are genuine
What was
victims.
the other one?
And audiences really,
would the songs-
audiences, general public, really gravitate toward that, oh, that needs to be solved. It's a problem to be solved. There it is. It's a
So
problem
it's
to
the
be solved.
victim and then turns out he's not the victim.
Oh,
Yeah, we want to discern.
Well, it's also,
It's a twist, I think.
well, it's also,
His religious
it's also looking to, here's Carol, they're looking for Jesse to be the hero of America. He's the guy that took down the Trump supporters and the president. They don't like the leadership, and so they're anxiously supporting him because they see that he's finally got the proof that the smoking gun, that the Trump supporters are the evil that is suppressing him and his people, and it's going to divide America. And so that's a huge, I mean, epic, it's about as epic as you can get in America, to watch this guy doing it, and then to twist that around and say, no, that he is the one that is the enemy. He is the one that, so that's the biggest drama you can possibly see. And then you're like, wow, now, because he was so bold about his life.
Yes.
And then when he got caught, you're like, wow, I can't believe anybody
Honestly, I
would
wonder
do that.
because
I would suggest, like, Abe is working on getting the story right, and he's just about, he's worked some scenes through, but he's just about done with the story stuff. And then he's planning on bringing Steven on board to help finish it through the script.
This is your own
I would
film.
suggest,
Yeah.
you go to PLOTSA, upload the script, and start in on some stuff, and then if you want to get some writers back involved, you could do it. But it's a matter of seeing structure and working it out, and we'd be glad to help you with it. I think Stephen would be glad to help some people here with that. But you have to just kind of start in, and because we require you to get it, and you don't go on beyond pitch. You can go on and explore some things and put it out there, but you can't pass it until you get this one done. You get this one approved, and then you gotta get this one, and you get that one. Yeah.
Is this process for a script that you've already written, like
No.
draft?
No.
Start.
Though we say you can do it.
You
Yeah.
can't start
These
from
guys,
scratch?
these guys are both starting from scratch. Yes, that was the
You're
intent.
using this to write your script?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh.
it's a script writing tool. But
You can also,
you can also plug
you
in
can
a
also
full
plug a
finished
full
script.
script.
So when you do.
And create a novella from it.
So, you know, if you sign up to get in here, then under here at the top, there's preparatory notes, and I'm looking for, who are the characters, what are the locations that takes place, what are some of the events that takes place, put all that jazz down there. Then compress it into this main line of action that we're calling Adam. Adam, being an independent but naive engineering doctorate candidate, tries to develop a frequency printer, and in the process risks planetary safety and learns to work with Sophie, bringing out a theme of connectedness. That's what we're about. Frequency printer creates matter, but also ends up creating life and other people. So those are the basic elements. Then he says, okay, that's one sentence. And then you need 3 sentences here, spelling out what happens in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Then you go to synopsis, and you fill out what the one sentence scenes are for each one of those. And you go to scenario, and you add your other lines of action. And here he's got Sophie.
This is all specifically to write the thing. None of this is like to make a producer go, try to take that out.
That's not a big one.
This is the writers take it together and say, look at where this goes, look at how this bonus is that, things like that. So none of this is sexy, it's all bonus.
Okay.
Now, I would add to that, by the way, what Amy presents with the entire whole approach to the writing approach that we have and character, who does what, the roles. And then what you have right here.
I say, I think between the randoms of this and the analysis, I mean, if we just get, figure out which order, I think, so I prefer with analysis to get at the very beginning, just to determine where your characters are, what their roles need to be, and then you've got the information to fill in, to, start sketching it out and then fill it in.
So how does Brandon?
I would say, because we start off with one character. One character, what is that, he's the main character.
Well, I love starting with the log, the elevator pitch, the log, that nugget of an idea, you have to have that.
Yeah.
And
Then we add the other one.
once you start, you're like, okay, well, is this Norberg, are they going to start their own story? Who are they up against?
It's an interesting exploring thing to dive into.
So right now, Stephen is wondering whether his piece is long enough
gets
or not.
redemption,
And he's finding that
Because
he has perhaps not spelled out the scenes well enough, not put enough detail.
But for some
See, and
reason,
So he's looking at,
it's
and that would make it longer, but maybe he needs some more subplots. And so we've been brainstorming about that, and that's where this would come. We could have another character that would do this.
So there are, within that original story tone, you have your original story, but then, like over here, you've got this backstory that you weave in, or you have over here, you've got a companion story, and, this dynamic, that's the Star is Born. You don't know the backstory when you first start, but it starts weaving in, the story of, I remember the man's name. He's the main character, honestly. And the girl is just the companion story. She's, basically like the character. And his is a tragic story, and hers is, the success.
So it would be great if we could
That's
figure out a way
where
to
the
pull this
subplots
together.
are, the backstory and the
Right.
companion story.
I think you just have class like a plot pattern, which is how to identify
But
what
either
kind
way,
of
then
plot
it's going
structure
to be
to
like,
match
okay,
with your
well,
audience.
for
They get
the
it.
Wicked Queen,
Yeah.
how did we
Cognitively-
do a character arc for her?
So you gotta look at cognitive development. Where is your audience? Where are they on that cognitive level, so that, are you doing something that's too simple for them? They're gonna reject it out of hand. Oh, that's too complex. That's stupid, this is for babies. Or kids, or, you look at Memento, how many people reject Memento out of hand? It's like, that's too much work. So the way you organize the plot, are you going to tell it backwards? Are you going to tell it in this piece, this piece, this piece? Look at The Martian, the overall arching story of the world. The people, the other astronauts, Martian, whatever they are. The ones on the, the ship. Yeah, you get them at the beginning, you get them at the very end, and they come in, but you don't have to track them through,
Or something like
for the general level of cognitive development that most people are at, most adults read.
It doesn't
But we get to
find
follow
a way.
the main character down on Mars with his individual story.
I wish, Amy, that you could work with a writer in getting something up.
I know, it's exactly.
And then we'll see, and maybe it's Nick, because Nick has told me about some stories that he's working on. What about Abraham?
Well, I would love to see how, who said at the very beginning, like a corporate association?
Yes.
I think that's what we are.
I'm trying to jump in here real quick. We've had a family crisis here, now I've got to run. And, but if I were, got to listen here and there and, and stuff, but, actually Katie's stuff. Katie knows all the Robert McKee stuff, and she's analyzed all that. But Doug, I would recommend, one, we start here with the structure, to help you get the bones, right? And
But
then I
then you
go,
have to draw them out, not just get
then I
names
would
of
go
characters.
to
Brandon, how does
Brandon.
Brandon's thing
I
fit
go-
into this?
What's
You
that?
understand how Brandon's thing fits into ours?
So,
Oh,
Not exactly.
okay, wait a second.
She's at right
Yeah.
1 second. I would say, one, okay, go do the structure with us. Number two, then Brandon plotted out this wonderful stuff where you take that story and you start mapping it out into the beats, right? And then 3, you just put this in here, and that's the order I would suggest you go. So that you're like building a house, you don't put the roof on before you have the blueprint drawn, right? We're blueprint. And then
You're more fleshed out.
it's going to flesh
You're
that out.
the one between, these two.
And then you're gonna take that, you're gonna put that in
See,
here
from,
and take it
from
further.
Brandon to us, he's the main line of action.
Yeah.
Ours includes the subplots.
Where you guys
You have
have
to
those
include-
subplots and stuff.
Yours maybe starts
It's
with,
just like
there are
the
these
structure.
characters doing, that are these type of characters.
Against this
And
type
map
of
that.
conflict.
Yeah, which is preparation for subplots and stuff.
Mhm.
That's what it's all, that's all. preparatory
At
work.
that point, you would be,
So you don't.
you'd be holding, I think, but I apologize. We had tragedy in our family this week, and I'm sorry, I've got to run.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things we talked a little bit about, like, Bach. Bach starts off with a main voice and then a bass.
Yes.
And then he adds material to it. He may have had other stuff along the line, but he's got to get that first one going, and then he can add some other kinds of things. So I think that the preparation is back into the pitch thing, where in pitch you've got the characters. Who are the characters? What are they like, sort of, and it's kind of loosey-goosey. We don't know exactly what we're going to actually use.
So I really love this, but if I didn't already have a story written out, I was like, well, I don't know right now. know.
Well, here,
Well, I don't know right now.
Yeah.
Well,
That's-
I don't know
and
right
That's
now.
where you put, that's where you put this material in.
here's how I solve that problem, because we're new, we wanna get out into the market, really ultimately wanna change the world. We want people to start watching films that we are creating here, and we
Yes.
should be the best people at it in the world, honestly.
Yes.
We have the story, we have the stories. And so I was like, well, what's the most popular genres? What's the most popular movies? He says, well, PG-13 movies are like the most popular. What's the most popular genre in that? It's an action movie, it's an adventure, an action adventure. And so that's where I wanted to start, because like, why start on a little niche market when we could, why not shoot for the moon? Maybe it doesn't end up being what I wanted, but that's kind of how I approach this, because if we can start getting wins, really big ones that have a wide appeal, that's what I'm interested in. I'm actually not interested in doing the art house LDS themed movies anymore. You put the doctrine inside it so that they can fill it, and then move from there.
I think that's where all.
So I think if we were to take that script and start it into PLOTSA, the first thing before you write out that main line of action is to put these back notes. And I think that's where you meet with her and say, okay, what are possible characters you've got in there? And you got a lot more than what you could possibly use.
An individual, like, how do you work best? I like physically writing. I go to the computer later.
Yeah.
And that could be just my particular influence, why I want to, like, get the idea, I start working it through, that's, working with Brandon stuff, and then, okay, now I can go to the computer and I don't want to just write all the dialogue right now. I want to get all this stuff that I've kind of imagined and been thinking of and writing in the middle of the night. I don't want to turn on the computer in the middle of the night when I have an idea, but I do want to write the idea down.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where I think.
In fact, Robert McKee says, there was some, he quotes some studio executive reporting to the top studio fellow saying, the script is finished, it only needs the dialogue now.
I think that's where
It's a very good way to look at
And
it.
he describes it as putting a muffle on to where you can't use the dialogue yet. And then when you can, it just comes out as floating up on top.
So how do you do a system like this that seems fairly linear to me?
Yes.
How do you throw a big giant monkey wrench in there that's a twist? Plot reversal, reversal portion, a
Kate would
twist.
call it a surprise.
How does that?
Well, the sequences, the acts, you're moving along like this and then bam, something happens. Those are turning points.
Can I give them one
Well, I think
more?
that's
Yeah,
where you
go
say
ahead, go ahead,
intention
go ahead.
versus opposition.
Go ahead.
I've got a metaphor for you. So you go to a magician, the magician does something, he does the trick, and you're like, holy smokes, how did that happen? And you know that the reason it happened was because he planned it all the entire way. He figured out, this is how it's going to go, this is how it's going to go. He put it all together, and then he thought, now how am I going to stop people from being able to see what it is that I'm doing so that it's magic? And so what we do is we help you put together the trick at the very beginning. This is how we're going to build it up, and here's the twist.
But
I've
by
got it
doing
all
your
figured
log
out.
line first, you know what that end
You know
surprise
what the trick
is.
is, yeah.
You know
You
the
know the
trick,
trick.
so
Exact what the
this
turns are
is
gonna
where
be.
you put in all the pre-steps that lead up to it.
Right.
Now, if you know that log line, that theme, the pitch step, whatever it is, not pitch step, sorry, business. The elevator pitch, you know what that is, how do you get to that? And that's how you.
And
Yes.
so we help you put that in.
Can I just add to that? The one thing that a lot of filmmakers forget is that magician is still operating by the laws of physics.
Right. Yep.
And
we have to
there's a
like
way that
animals.
he has to be able to make that work to appear
Mhm.
like magic.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times in films we forget that and we throw a twist in to be a twist and a surprise.
And it's
And
totally ungrounded, ungrounded.
yeah, and it's surprising. But I love what Brandon Sanderson, what Reyes used to say, is that it's got to be surprising yet inevitable. Once you know the trick, once you know the physics of how the thing works, it still has to be impressive on the level of the performance. I think that The Sixth Sense does a really good job of that, because once you find out that twist, he even gives you the moments where you think back, right? It's like, oh, but he interacted with the wife, but he didn't. Oh, and nope, he never spoke to that person. And you get to go
Well,
through.
by the way, this
That was a
is
good
again,
twist.
this is again Aristotle. I keep
But
going
I
back
will-
to Aristotle. He says you can have surprises, but you want them to not be this deus ex machina that comes and just
Yeah.
does something wonderful.
But-
There's gotta be something where it'll say, oh, yes, I remember back there, and I should have seen it coming.
It connects
Yeah.
back.
Yes,
Yeah, you gotta do all
So-
that.
Foreshadowing, foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
Well, it makes
Foreshadowing.
it makes people want to watch the movie the second time too.
Yeah.
You get twice your money. You get twice your money.
Yeah, now the problem is when that second time it falls apart. I feel like Frozen is a good bad example.
Oh, yes.
Because what you have is this twist where the prince and the good guy that she's gonna marry ends up turning into this villain character at the end. And when I rewatched the movie, there is actually a point in the beginning of the film when she first meets him that he falls into the water and is like in the boat when she walks away. And you have this moment where he's watching her walk away and he kind of gives this puppy love smile, like, to her, like this kind of, oh, like, she's wonderful type thing. And the problem is that in the film language, we get this omniscient view where we get to see that, where nobody else sees that. That's put there to throw us off, but that's giving us a false information of him by using an
Well, that's because
omniscient
they
view.
changed the whole ending.
Yes, it's because they changed the whole ending, but
Originally, the one sister's the villain, the blonde.
yeah, and she actually is the villain through the whole movie.
She is. And they just switched it at the end, and there's no foundation.
Yeah, they actually don't need it.
Work.
Well, the songs work. The songs.
And I'll actually.
What's your definition of a film works? It's commercially successful.
So,
So if we
Well,
can help,
that's
if we
the
can help
interesting
Tom
too.
Taylor with this, we'll get thousands of films submitted and scripts, and then we will get, be able to provide him weekly with quality films to show and films in progress.
Yeah.
And there'll be little videos about it, about what they've been doing. That's what, but we have to be able to get people so that they can sort through this kind of stuff. And so right now where we're at, and Abe and Steve have been so helpful to us by actually working through a piece really closely. We're seeing what they need. And that's why if you with somebody else would pick a piece, I keep thinking Nick, and work it through with him, then we would see any other changes that we might need, and we're getting more people up to the level of staff that are evaluating it after the peers look at it, and then it goes to audience reviews in theaters and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will like to kind of wrap that up by saying, yes, Frozen does work. It's actually a very well-crafted film, but it's not a masterpiece and it's not perfect. And I'm not here to just make something that works. I'm here to make something as good as I possibly can. And in Frozen's case, they went a very, they changed the ending. They went through this course, and I think that they did a really good job with the course that they went through, but there was still more that they could have done. And I imagine that the writers would say that there's more that they could have done as well.
I guarantee 100%, because I work for Disney, they have that audience testing that movie.
Yeah.
That it was originally written, and they said, no, that's terrible,
No,
that's horrible.
nobody's gonna watch it.
And so they're
That's why they
because
changed it.
we would see the Pixar movies, 2 years before they would get, and
Yeah.
you get to see the changes,
Yep.
because they do a
Yeah.
lot of magic.
So we say that this, I mean, because it's like being able to have the Pixar Brain Trust without having to have the Pixar Brain Trust.
Yeah.
This just is the dynamics of why that works.
So Amy, if there are places in here where we need to provide more
Oh, I would
places where
love
they
to.
could include
Yeah.
stuff in there.
Hi,
we'll
I'm
switch.
gonna get
It's
my
easy.
hands on it, I need time.
It's easy to do.
Hey, let me address another element here, and that is that there are a whole lot, a month ago, I made my presentation here on this whole premise, that there are a whole lot of scripts that have either a lot of excellent elements to them or potential for that are directed by directors who, it's all over their head. They have they're clueless, practically clueless about what really they have in this script. And what you've got here, what you're outlining here is a marvelous tool, and what you have is terrific also for directors to really mine what is in this script and really understand it for several reasons and do several things with it. Number one, make sure that leading the audience, taking the audience on that proper journey so that you don't just gloss over certain things and end up making a mediocre film, but also what to say to actors to bring about true performances as opposed to false
Right.
performances, which is
And,
enormously
and I would say that's why I particularly like Brandon's little film, if you can see it, it's on his website, shot at Osaka's on Center Street.
Yep, down Provo. Up
It,
in
it,
Provo.
it brings out the main beats. I watch a film and I see a director and I'm saying to myself, he's just using this shot, he finally wanted to use that shot, and he's just throwing this stuff in. He's not bringing out the beats. He takes a very simple little story and we see the tension and the beats in the thing, and the filming brings it out. And I said, okay, he understands. Then the other thing that I would add is that when the actor is performing, he needs to know what is the action that he's doing. What is this beat about? I'm trying to convince this person to do that. That's Stanislavski. And you're not saying to them, and I want you to feel distressed as you do that. No, just tell them what it is they're trying to do, and the emotional thing will occur in the context of banging up against those other characters. So again, I agree. It is for the directors to get a hold of all of this stuff and then continue on with it. And the master of this, I've seen it, was James Agee was a writer, and who did his stuff? African Queen, who was the director?
yeah, Houston.
John Huston. And people would say, wow, it was such powerful shots and point of view kinds of things. He says, I was following the writer. You've got to follow the writer. Right. And all of those kinds of things. So you need really educated directors who understand what's going on, this stuff. And then he'll bring it all the way through. And back to Aristotle, he used to say, the story has got to move people. It's got to work by itself. Before you think about any spectacle, he called it spectacle, music, performance, all that kind of stuff.
Wrinkle
And that's right.
over
It's
the
got to
size of
be
the
built
house.
on it. But we see a lot of the contrary, fancy camera work and this, that, and the other, and it's not built on that, it's not great.
Good editing.
It's not great.
It's not built on.
Motivated
Things I deal with actors in my master classes is intent, objectives, and plan. Plan is what a beat is. A change in
Very
plan
little.
is a change in beat.
Yeah.
And these are things that you don't always have to have an actor understand every element of that. So much of it is and should be intuitive, but directing them, it's all going to be understood. Every element, every part of every scene. And it's all based on the intrinsic things you're speaking of right here. These are great tools for directors.
Yeah.
And editors, because everything is
And
created
that's why
3 times.
we do want to take, like, I'd love to take these couple of stories that Abe and Stephen are working on and find around here some local directors that, I think directors have got to give up the idea of trying to shoot shorts. There's not a market for it. It won't get you
It's just a
traction.
calling card is all it is.
Yeah, it's very little.
You don't sell.
Shoot a scene for a feature film that has gotten approved and is going to go to a distributor, and it's essentially your calling card for saying, I believe I could make this whole film.
Good point.
Do a scene,
Good point.
one scene. Like the Osaka thing feels like it's one scene in a movie. I don't know what the whole movie is. I like to see the whole movie, but it feels like it's one scene. And that one scene, packaged together with the rest of the story, could make a distributor say, okay, yes, I'm going to tell my investors about this, and we're going to get the money, and I want you to direct it. So continue on in the pre-production.
To underline that point too, you could have saved that company, what, $14 billion, who just, QB is it called? That they were doing all the shorts and nobody even knows who they are.
Oh, QBTV.
QBTV,
Yeah.
Total disaster.
Oh,
Is it a disaster? I haven't been following it since the huge.
Is that all they were doing? They're showing shorts?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they're all.
shorts. They thought they were
Well, that was their whole ad
distributed
campaign.
movies,
Like,
you know.
oh, I got bit by a zombie. Well, that's enough time for a QB film. Like,
wow.
It's huge.
it's like.
So that's all the industry money that they spent.
So if there's any way
Yeah.
we could help any of you, we would just be glad to do so. Or any friends that you might have, just bring them our way and get them on, and we'll start working with them.
Do you have a segment on the site that allows
Yeah.
directors to look for a script and then turn around and buy it?
All kinds of stuff.
Yes, we'll have places on there where scripts are approved. And then those, they
And
can.
directors who are serious can get on there and say,
Yes.
oh, I like this one, and
Yes.
then make a deal.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Whatever.
Cut a deal. Directors or producers or distributors, yeah.
Approved by buy-in from people?
Yeah, we wanna have we identify that it's going to be a good structured script, and then whether it's, sellable will be up to the marketplace, right? So, but we've
Right.
heard, at least in our end, that we can help pitch it.
Right. And in short of that, if we show them, here is the story, through the treatment, or here is the whole script, and we are auditioning directors that would maybe like to make this piece, just shoot one scene. But we're not gonna let you just shoot one scene. We're gonna say, okay, what are your shot descriptions, and are they built upon beats? And then are you storyboarding the thing? We wanna see that. And then, step by step, to show that they know they and their buddies know how to produce a whole film. And they've just gone all the way through it with one or two scenes. And then that package goes in to where we help raise the money for them.
To a distributor.
To a distributor. Money people are hovering around distributors. They don't want to get burned. They say, if distributor, if you like this, then we think it is going to make some money.
Well, distributors will have a good idea of the
That works.
of the check boxes that have to be hit in order for it to work and sell as well.
So that one scene, like we shot a 10-minute piece. So can it be, does that one scene have to be a certain length, or
No,
can it be anything?
just something enough that shows,
Grabs the audience.
right, but shows. the
But they also do
understanding
trailers too.
of-
Some guys do trailers where they shoot several scenes and then cut them together.
Yeah,
To
that's
make
right.
it look like
Yeah. I
this is
think
a
that
movie
doesn't
that's already
show,
done.
that doesn't show, if you've taken a scene and you've done the shot descriptions and the storyboards,
Right.
and you do a production plan and a rough cut and final cut of that, and it's been peer and staff reviewed and audience,
Right.
they've been checked along the way, that gives us a pretty good assurance that you could do this whole dang thing.
I see.
Yeah.
Well,
You
not
see
even
what I
that, I looked at it before, like on the writer's end, if going in that this person's actually finished it. I'm not gonna be stuck with something that's not done,
Yeah,
just some idea that never gets finished.
Yeah, as someone who had a company called Cinema Book Trailers that made movie trailer type commercials for books and authors, I will tell you that it is a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult and a lot more time consuming to do a trailer type setting,
Right.
because for every
shoot
single
stuff.
you need all the locations, you need to build all the things. Like, we would joke that we could shoot the movie, like, by the time,
By the time you did a trailer.
we got the trailer done, because you still have to build and do all
Yeah,
of that
you
stuff.
got so
Yeah,
many-
even
Um,
doing one scene is tough, because you have to cast it, you have to,
Right.
some money's gonna have to be still put into
Yeah.
it.
Now,
Yeah, to do
if
that.
you want a really good example of a one scene in terms of marketability, go look at the teaser trailer for Tron Legacy. Because Tron Legacy was a film that the director was really passionate about and wanting to get off the ground. I don't think he had any directorial experience before Tron Legacy itself. He did a lot of VFX work. And he approached, I think it was Disney, with it, and they were really fascinated and really wanted to try the movie out, but without any weight to carry for himself. Instead of greenlighting the project, they gave him a small amount of funds and told him to show him a sample that kind of captures the vision and shows them that he can make that movie.
Mhm.
And the teaser trailer was actually his pet project to prove that he could do it. It plays out like a scene. It's kind of has like a beginning, middle, end. It's been a while since I've looked at it,
Yeah,
but they actually leaked that as a trailer to even see if there was interest in the movie before they greenlit it. Like, they were that nervous about doing it. But that is actually a really good showcase of something that you can do that's self-contained. You know, you watch the movie and that whole thing doesn't have anything to do with the movie because that's not what
It
it
was
was
good
for.
enough to get him the job.
But it got him the job, it got him the funding, it got him the film. Another fun one to watch that's not as polished as the Tron Legacy trailer is if you look up Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. The studios did not believe that Tobey Maguire could be Spider-Man. They thought that he was a good Peter Parker, but they didn't think that he could do the action. And so, again, they gave Sam Raimi a little bit of money. I think he just flew out to LA with a small crew and grabbed Tobey Maguire, and they put together an action sequence to showcase Tobey Maguire being able to do it. And that's also a really fun watch. It's also really funny because he was working out and really got ripped for it. So they just have all these like shots of him like, you know, backhanding someone with all of his muscle and like water splashing on him and stuff. But like their goal was to showcase Peter Parker as an action hero with Tobey Maguire, and they do a short scene to basically show the studios that he could do that.
I bet Toby loved that.
It looked like he had a blast, as far as I could tell. It looked like they all had a blast. That's the thing. It looks like a lot of fun.
But it got the job.
But
too.
it
That's
got the job.
last thing about it.
And, you know, part of it is that you have to, like at a certain point, a writer who gets the structure right, the treatment right, he can let another writer audition to do the scenes. So he's auditioning scenes, you're picking somebody to finish this thing. And you have to do some stuff on spec to see if you are chosen. And so when you're doing the pre-development thing, you're doing the storyboards, you're auditioning actors, you're getting some actors together, even if it's simply at the auditions, to run lines and to do something together. You need as much of that stuff put together in a package, in a video, to show a distributor this movie that's coming with these actors. And I believe, and we're working on a thing from Robert McKee. Robert McKee gave a paper, or gave an interview to the Harvard Business Review. And he said, stop pitching entrepreneurial things in the normal PowerPoint presentation by comparing it and comparables and all that kind of stuff. Tell your story. Say that when I was 16 years old, my dad died of cancer. And I decided to devote my life to cancer research. And then I went along and went to college, and then we got stuck because the FDA wouldn't allow this or something. But then I got this, and then I pulled this guy together and he did this, and we're right up here, and all we need is a little money from you guys. And then he says he's done it.
Don't compare yourself to another film?
No, don't compare yourself to another film.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, tell your story.
Tell your
in
story, not
this
something.
film. And he said, but that's if you do it for films. He's saying doing it for all pitching projects trying to raise money. And he says he's done it with dozens of companies, and he gets the money because he tells
His story.
His engaging story. And you pack into it, we found this actor and this scene here and this, and then we tried this and we couldn't do that, and he emphasizes, don't just make it all peachy. Show the hard things so that people are rooting for you. Oh, okay, yeah, you're going, and you build that piece. And then you see for Tom and for a theater, we want to show those pieces. We want to show not only completed films, but films in progress that need money. And then at those theaters, we'll get investors and distributors on Zoom kinds of things coming in afterwards and discussing these things. But,
Cool.
yeah.
So Tom, that's who is just here, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And he's an investor?
Yes.
Maybe we should hear from him on what we need to say and how we need to say it.
These are our next presentation.
We're talking about story and story and story and
Yeah, that's the
story.
way. If you stepped on the story.
Yeah, the story is very, very important. I'm not bashing the story,
Yeah.
but to get to that next level,
Yes.
Right.
that there's some hard discussions. I mean, at the LDS Film Festival this year, for example, I had a panel that, and I know we're late and we have to go, but we had a panel discussion about theatrical distribution. And I brought in let's see, is anybody here to that? I just want to make sure.
We were all.
You guys were there.
We were there.
Yeah. And I it was a 2-hour panel. We did 2 of them. We did one on theatrical, and then we did one on adapting to the Christian market. And when I brought them in, and we had our discussion with those decision makers who are looking for product, I walked away kind of disillusioned.
Same here.
I went, oh my gosh, these are the guys making the decision on LDS film and then some, that are related, not always just LDS. And I walked away just being disillusioned because there was no, it was everything felt like, well, you could try that, but, that was kind of the answer. It's like, give us a success story, give us a story that worked, and so that we can copy that. And so when it comes to discussing, the next round of things to discuss, i.e. the money.
I think we need to build it.
Yeah,
We
yeah, I
build
agree,
these
yeah.
pieces and show it to people like Tom.
Yeah.
And I do think we ought to mention how it compares, comparables and so on, but it can't be a dry kind of thing. It has to be.
Don't rest on that.
Yeah, we can't rest on that. It's gotta.
Yeah, 'cause
and
most
I'd like
people-
to try the Robert McKee kind
My
of
film's
thing.
gonna be like Indiana
Yeah.
Jones,
The thing
Raiders,
is,
but you can't rest on
investors who give money give it to because of their hearts. Oh, I love this story. Here, they don't care that their money's back. And then the guys who watch the movies watch them. They're not, a lot of the films that are being made here, while some are good and some are great, they're not ones that are like on a Friday night, what are we gonna sit and watch? And it's nothing that we're producing here. I mean, there's very few that we're like, and of course we have to change that, and that's what we're here to try to do.
Yeah.
It's such a marriage.
This woman from UVU who's
Tracy Ainsworth.
Yeah.
I'll
Is that recorded?
I'll call her.
We
Her
did.
teaches classes
Yeah,
on
no,
green
they had
light.
a presentation.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I want
So does
to.
John Lee.
Yeah, John Lee, we're all the time guys.
Yes, he is,
Yeah.
and he has been in contact with John. John needs to.
John is still around?
Not here, he's in LA, he just got back from China because he's doing a lot of work with his studio in China.
Didn't he start Invictus?
I'll bring my laptop.
Years and years ago.
Maybe, yeah. But I just know that, since he wrote the book on film finance, I mean, here's a guy, and Tom and I have talked, and one of his big objections is the fact we're not polished as directors and producers when they come to talk to the money person, because they don't have a schedule, they don't know, how am I gonna get this done for that amount of money?
It's all
One of his big objections is that it's all vague, and I've got this idea, and, yeah.
So
That's one of the things that makes Tom weird.
Mailed it to the address.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, sure.
We're out of time.
Anyway,
Yeah.
did you still want a tour?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have 10 minutes to give me, or 15 minutes or whatever to give me a tour? I mean, it's, I got a little tour from Doug last time.
Did you get the full tour?
Well, he gave me the quickie and I felt bad that he gave me the quickie.
Here's the building. Thanks for coming.
See ya.
Yeah, well, in some ways, okay, it's a big room, and there's that thing.
Oh, it'll be all.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting when I went up to the studio in Park City, fabulous facility, but the sets that were there for that series was more interesting. Because otherwise, it's a big barn with rafters and things to hang lights on.
That's a studio space.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
It's kind of, it's.
and part of this is we just need to be more organized.
Yeah.
And that's why we were so hard trying to get a group together, because each of us know a little piece, like you're saying, what about this, what about that? Yeah, here's what you did, I mean, I loved Brandon Mull's book choices, yeah, but then Brandon Mull's spirit,
Carry it into your heart.
Yeah.
It's like,
They were fun.
oh yeah, no,